Did Roberta Laundrie actually say in a letter that she would bake a cake for Brian Laundrie with a Shiv in it if he goes to jail? Hello, Empower Warriors. Empowering True Crime Alex here. And we're diving into some new information that comes out on the Gabby Petito case. For those of you who don't know, Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old blogger, travel blogger, who was traveling the country in her van. And she had her fiance, Brian Laundrie, along with her. And after a couple of months of traveling on the road together, she disappeared. And it turns out that he killed her. And then he drove back to Florida. He ended up unaliving himself after a massive manhunt to find him. Thing is, Roberta and Chris Laundrie, his parents, stayed silent. And that's why we're in this situation right now, because Gabby Petito's parents, Joe and Nicole, are not having it. They're saying that somehow the Laundries were complicit. They either knew about the murder or covered it up, somehow were involved. And they're citing a letter, it was called a burn after reading letter, that Roberta Laundrie came out recently and wrote her own letter about why she wrote the letter. And she said, it was paraphrasing here, but she said in essence that it was her way of connecting with her son, who was, an adult. So it was a little strange. But one of the things that she said is, she would give him a shovel. And so we're all saying, okay, well, this was written after Gabby died, then basically is she complicit? And then there was another thing about baking a cake, and then something about having a Shiv in it. So let's dive into this, because it just seems very crazy. Okay, so this is an article from WFLA, who has been covering this from the beginning. Brian Laundrie's mother offered to bake cake with Shiv inside, claims Petito attorney in court filing. Brian Laundrie's mother wrote a letter to her son that included an offer of baking a cake with a Shiv inside to help Brian if he were sent to prison for Gabby Petito's murder, according to a new court filing by the attorney for Gabby Petito's parents. In the court filing in Sarasota County Circuit Court, Pat Riley, who's representing Joe Petito and Nicole Schmidt in a lawsuit against the Laundries, is arguing for the release of the burn after reading letter written by Roberta Laundrie to her son Brian to prove she was allegedly aware of Petito's murder in August 2021. The letter in question, written by Roberta Laundrie to Brian Laundrie, references bringing a shovel to help bury a body and baking a cake with a Shiv in it should Brian Laundrie go to prison. A reasonable inference is that the letter was written at a time when Gabrielle Petito was as yet unburied and Brian Laundrie could go to jail for the crime of murder. Riley says the letter was collected by the FBI as evidence and released back to the Laundries earlier this year. He says he has seen the letter, which is said to have burn after reading written on the envelope. In previous interviews with the media, Riley has alluded to Roberta Laundrie allegedly offering to make a cake with a knife or a saw inside to assist in Brian's escape from prison. However, this is the first time the claim is referenced in a court filing. And here are the documents. Plaintiff's response to defendant's motion for protective order. Here's a request. It says, please produce a copy of a letter written by Roberta Laundrie to Brian Laundrie, which letter states, in part, that Roberta Laundrie would bring a shovel to help bury a body, and which letter was contained in an envelope, which on said envelope said, burn after reading. The original of said letter was delivered to attorney Stephen Bertolino by the FBI on June 24, 2022. I wonder if they burned that letter. In March, Roberta Laundrie wrote a motion to the court and confirmed the letter's existence, but insisted it had nothing to do with Gabby Petito. She claims it was written months before Gabby and Brian left on their cross-country road trip in the summer of 2021. And she said the purpose of the letter was to reach out to Brian while he and I were experiencing a difficult period in our relationship. Brian and I always had a very open and communicative relationship. In the months prior to the trip, our relationship had become strained. Brian and I shared a love of stories, and some of the language in the letter was using similar phrases to describe the depths of a mother's love. Like burying bodies together? Okay. Petito and Schmidt are suing the Laundries and their longtime attorney, Stephen Bertolino, for intentional infliction of emotional distress. They claim the Laundries and Bertolino were aware of Gabby's murder in August 2021, but refused to do anything other than release a statement expressing hope Petito would be found. Riley, in the court filing, says he believes a jury should decide when the letter was written and if it has any connection to Petito's death. If the jury were to find that the letter was written after Gabrielle Petito's murder, it is further proof that the Laundries and Bertolino were aware that she was deceased at the time the statements in question were issued. If it was not written at a time when Roberta Laundrie knew that her son had murdered Gabrielle Petito, it is at best an odd letter from her mother to write a son, and Roberta's Laundrie's explanation for writing it is frankly unbelievable. In March, Roberta admitted that her letter does contain references that some would think are about her son and Petito. However, she claims there's no connection between her words and what happened to the couple. While I use words that seem to have a connection with Brian's actions and his taking of Gabby's life, I never would have fathomed the events that unfolded months later between Brian and Gabby would reflect the words in my letter. The words in the letter could never have been a comment on that tragic situation as they were written so many months before. My words to Brian were meant to convey my love and support for my son through a lighthearted and quirky reminder that my love for him was not diminished and could not be shaken by the miles of separation we would soon be faced with. So it's interesting because I remember covering this and I don't remember that her admitting, but here it says, and his taking of Gabby's life. So here she's actually admitting to Brian killing Gabby. Judge Daniel Brewer has scheduled a hearing on May 24th to rule on whether the burn after reading letter should be granted to Petito and Schmidt in the discovery process and included in the trial, which is slated for May 2024. Okay, so they're meeting on May 24th, and then it's going to be a year later is when it would be going to trial. Brewer will also rule on Bertolino's motion to dismiss, which Riley contends should be denied in part due to the Laundrie's previous dismissal attempt being rejected. Let's go back to these documents and see if there is anything else that pops up in them. So on March 6th, the Laundries filed a motion for protective order, which basically means they don't want to give up the letter. And in her reasoning, it sounds like it says here, the first problem with the Laundries motion is that it is entirely premised upon Roberta's affidavit. The Laundrie's argument is that Roberta Laundrie says that the letter was written prior to Gabby Petito's death that is not relevant and therefore a protective order is appropriate. The Laundrie's sole basis for seeking a protective order is that the letter is not relevant. Relevancy is not a proper ground for protective relief under said rule. The Laundries argue that the letter was not published to the plaintiffs and thus it could not have caused them emotional distress. They are absolutely correct, but that is not the reason why plaintiffs seek the letter. The plaintiff's claim against the defendants is based upon statements made by attorney Bertolino on behalf of himself and the Laundries at a time when the defendants knew that Gabrielle Petito was deceased. The letter in question, written by Roberta Laundrie to Brian Laundrie, references bringing a shovel to help bury a body and baking a cake with a Shiv in it should Brian Laundrie go to prison. A reasonable reference is that the letter was written at a time when Gabrielle Petito was as yet unburied and Brian Laundrie could go to jail for the crime of murder. If the jury were to find that the letter was written after Gabrielle Petito's murder, it is further proof that the Laundries and Bertolino were aware that she was deceased at the time the statements in question were issued. It was not written at a time when Roberta Laundrie knew that her son had murdered Gabrielle Petito. It is at best an odd letter for a mother to write a son. And Roberta Laundrie's explanation for writing it is frankly unbelievable. It is within the province of the jury to decide whether Roberta Laundrie is credible in her assertion as to when the letter was written and to determine the relationship, if any, to Gabrielle Petito's death. So this is just reiterating what we read in the article earlier, but it's good to see it right here in the documents, the court documents. It is understandable that the Laundries would argue that the letter is embarrassing and most prejudicial to Roberta Laundrie. Nevertheless, that does not mean that it is not discoverable. So the Laundries don't want to give over the letter as discovery. The Petitos are saying, yes, give us the letter for discovery for this lawsuit. I mean, really, if it's nothing, if it really isn't anything, if it really isn't a big deal, then the Laundries should just give over the letter. The fact that they're making, like, they're actually going to court about this letter shows that the Laundries believe that it actually is. I mean, in my opinion, I believe that the Laundries believe that it actually is something that could hurt them. Finally, defendants suggest that the letter be produced to the court in camera. Plaintiffs suggest that nothing will be gained by that, as plaintiffs and their counsel have already seen the letter, and it is acknowledged that it is undated. There is no work product information, privileged material, private information such as financial or medical records, or any trade secrets in the letter requiring an in-camera review before the court rules on the motion. Okay, so because I had a question, I wanted to look up what does in-camera review mean? And in the US, courts in-camera review describes a process or procedure where a judge privately looks at confidential, sensitive, or private information to determine what, if any, information may be used by a party or made public. The thing is, in this case, it's just a letter and there wasn't any private information or confidential information. So the Petitos are just wondering why there would need to be an in-camera review if there isn't that sensitive or confidential information. Wherefore, the plaintiffs respectfully request this honorable court deny the request for protective order as the defendants have failed to show good cause for same. Signed by Patrick Riley, who is the attorney for the Petitos. Wow. So the letter comes back into question. Now there's this protective order. The Laundries don't want to produce the letter for discovery in the lawsuit. And the Petitos lawyer is saying, no, we need the letter. We want it, we find it is absolutely relevant. And so they're going to court to see whether or not it becomes discoverable. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and let me know. I mean, do you think that this letter actually was something like that the Roberta Laundrie knew about Gabby dying and basically not being buried yet? And that has something to do with that, with her death? Or do you think it was just her being kind of weird and having this weird kind of relationship with her son and having this burn after reading letter envelope and talking about baking cakes with Shivs in it if he goes to court? Let me know your thoughts. What do you think? One thing I could think of is it would be highly unfortunate. If it was something like, sometimes people talk about, oh, like you're such a great friend of mine, we'll bury the bodies together. And I think about this case and I was like, never say that. Just don't say that. Don't write it. Don't say it, because quite frankly, it's not relevant. And, do you really, really want to bury bodies with somebody? If anything, a loving friend will help somebody through the situation and encourage them to turn themselves in if they actually need to do that, right? So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe if you want more empowering true crime. Just my style is very much advocate for the victims, giving them a voice and providing as much education, information as possible to allow you to make your decisions with a victim-focused angle. So if that's your style of true crime, if you enjoy that, appreciate if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell so that you get notified anytime I post a video. And stay safe, stay thriving, and have an empowering week. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for notifications. Thank you.